Hello, welcome to the, I think, final wrap-up video for 2025. To be fair, I think this video is probably going up end of February, early March, but that doesn't matter, it's fine. This is probably also the last time I'll be wearing my Christmas earrings for the season, but it felt like it matched just everything. Unless I have a Christmas audition, which has happened in the past, and then I do pop Christmassy earrings in. It's quite cold. It's probably colder now than it was, during December. But it's fine. I've got a warm mug of tea, I'm wearing a warm jumper, we're fine. And in this video, this is one I'm a little bit nervous about, but also quite excited. Last year, probably around April, May time, I did a video where I reflected on my last 3 months of expenses. And I think I broke down, I haven't actually watched that video back, but I think I broke down basically how I spend my money. For those of you who don't know, I live in London, which is not one of the cheapest cities in the world. I do work 3 jobs, and I see a lot of theatre. So a lot of my money goes there. I don't really go out much, I don't do much socialising, and I definitely don't like spending money when I'm socialising. So really for me, the biggest costs in my life are theatre and then also just travel to and from work. But I do also like travelling. And basically when I did it earlier in 2025, I'd only just moved into this flat. And so there were a lot of costs associated with moving to a new place. But I figured I would do this again for the final 6 months of 2025 because I presumed it would be a bit more steady, a bit more realistic. And on the whole it was, but we had a bit of a funny thing going on September, October time, which I'll talk about when we look at those months. So what we're going to do in just a moment is I'm going to show on my computer various pie charts, once again, that I've made. One for each month, July through to December, that shows my spending. And then one that shows the 6 months compared to each other, how much I spent. And I'll talk about each month, and I'll talk about what I'm expecting for each month. In fact, I might do some of that now. And we'll just have a look at a realistic life in London. And the thing that's interesting is some people would say my life and my expenses are realistic in the sense of I've got a pretty standard rent for a studio flat. It's not crazy expensive, but it's certainly not cheap, or at least a studio flat in London, I should say. Hi, it's a bit later and I just want to jump in to say I've realised I actually probably spend less than the average Londoner on rent because I split the rent with Wayne. And so what I've included in this is, 50% of the rent. So what we pay between us is probably the average for this kind of place. But what I pay on my own is actually probably significantly less than what most people in London who are on their own spend. Anyway, back to the video. I travel to and from work, I would say sort of 3 days a week. I cook my own meals, so it's regular shopping. Obviously, as I've already mentioned, I don't really go out much or socialise much, but on the flip side of that, I see a lot of theatre. And I did actually talk about how much I spent on theatre in my theatre ranking, which I'll link up here. And one thing I will say is I feel very awkward talking about money. It's not something I'm comfortable talking about. So why are you making a video, Raquel? Great question. In part for my own curiosity, because even though I do keep track of it always, I have done since I moved out, as in moved out of my parents' place. I've never actually looked at the breakdown of where the money goes. I just keep track of it for my own sake, but I've not sort of categorized things. But then also in part because I think it's important to be realistic about where money is going. And I really enjoyed and do enjoy watching other people's videos around sort of money, especially in London. So I do want to contribute. But that being said, I won't go into specifics. The only time I've been specific was on that theatre video, but I don't like going too in depth. I did have a recommendation to include savings, money that's gone into savings, but I don't generally do that on a monthly basis. What I do is I wait for my regular bank account to reach a certain threshold that I've just set for myself, and then once it reaches that threshold, I usually take about half and put it in my savings. And also, with my 3 different jobs, I get paid in different ways. One, I get paid the last Friday of the month, one I get paid the last working day of the month, and one I get paid every week. So it's not consistent, and yeah. And also because I feel I do put a lot in savings, and I'm very grateful that I'm able to do that, and I know that that's a privileged position that a lot of people, especially living in London, aren't able to do. But I felt like I couldn't keep track of it perfectly, and I don't know, it felt funny doing that. But I don't know much about the general London population and my age range in terms of saving, but I would say I'm probably above average on my saving abilities. But anyway, let's have a look at my expenses. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to start from July, as I've already said, is I figured the last 6 months would be fairly flat. I didn't have any travel, not serious travel planned. I didn't have any extreme outgoings. Again, things came up and I will talk about those as and when we reach each month. But yeah, just to be aware of. So let me get it up and I'll see you in a moment. All right, so here is July. And one thing I will say is that my expenses each month change, like how much in total I spend, but rent has not. So even though the percentage might change, it's always the same amount. It did go up by like £10 in October, but not enough to make a huge difference. So 50% of my expenses on rent. And to be clear, because I don't know if I made this clear enough in the first part of this video, that doesn't mean that 50% of my income went into rent. That's 50% of everything I spent. The next biggest chunk on here is travel out of London. And that is because we did have a slight exception in July, which is that I went to meet the Dear Hopefuls on a trip. And that was wonderful. It was very, very special. I think I had already paid for the Airbnb, I think in June or even May. I could be mistaken. But I think the biggest costs here, maybe trains and also especially food. Because we did one massive shop at the beginning, and it was not crazy priced. Like the overall trip was not very expensive, but it was definitely more than I usually would spend. And I'm pretty sure I also contributed to petrol, so that also probably was a cost somewhere. The next biggest is theatre, 10%. I actually don't remember seeing that much theatre in July. I definitely saw Evita. I can't remember what else I might have seen. I think I saw Great Gatsby maybe. That's all I can think of. Anyway, next biggest slice is travel. And then when it says in brackets London, that basically just means topping up my oyster. That's how I calculate it. So again, close to 10% on my travel, my commute, if you will. But it's not only my commute, because it's also if I go to the theatre or if I go and meet friends or whatever. Then 6.5% on my groceries. I try to not spend too much on groceries. I very much buy the cheapest things that are reduced, the home brand stuff, and I make, cheap food and batch meals and whatever. And also probably important to note that a lot of my Friday nights and Saturday meals I get from family, and often there's leftovers, so usually I have, call it 3 meals a week that I don't need to worry about for myself. And also occasionally Wayne does the shopping. I haven't calculated exactly, but this is just what I spend. Then the next slice of the pie is going out. This is generally just if I've gone out with friends, I think. Maybe I've included Wayne in this, I don't know. And I don't know what going out was in July. I don't remember what I did and who it was with. But this is not the same as the Dear Hopefuls trip or theatre. And then finally other. Now other includes bills like my phone bills, internet, that kind of thing. And I'm trying to think what else it might include. Basically just anything else that I might have bought, like if there's a present or something that I need to buy, or if I need to post something or whatever. Anything that wouldn't be categorized in any of the other things. Now you'll see I also have a work category, and this month there was 0, but what I include in the work category is anything like sometimes I need to get a DBS for certain jobs. Any food that I might need to buy for performing work, in the sense of if I'm out filming somewhere all day and I buy a coffee, that might go into my work category as opposed to groceries or whatever. And that is because I can claim it back on my insurance, not insurance, on my tax what? Yeah, just on taxes. This also could include any classes, so if I do a dance class, acting class, singing class, anything like that. Also if I need to buy any equipment or clothing for certain jobs. Not that it happens very much, and even when it does, it's either sometimes reimbursed or, as I say, I can claim it back on my taxes, but I've just got the category there because it does come up a couple of times. Moving on to August. Now, I think August was probably my most regular month. I don't remember seeing loads of shows. I definitely didn't travel out of London. I can't think of what else, but let's have a look. Okay, so here what you can see is rent is a much, much bigger slice of the pie. And that is because, even though it's the same amount, exact same amount, it's because I obviously spent less that month. And that's probably because of the Dear Hopefuls trip. In fact, the Dear Hopefuls trip was 20%, wasn't it? Or close to, so that would make perfect sense. Let me just check. Yeah, travel out of London was almost 18%, so that kind of makes up for it. Zoom in, come on. Okay, so then the next biggest slice of the pie is groceries, my shopping. And there it was 9%. I think before it was about 7. Yeah, 6.5. Then my travel in London, so again, commute and more. Then other, 5.8%. I don't know if that is a bigger, I don't know if I spent more on other that month, or if it's just, again, percentages change because I spent less overall. Then we've got going out. No, yes, going out was next biggest, 3.5%. Again, I don't remember what I did. Oh, actually, I do. it was my friend's birthday and we went bowling. So that's probably the one going out expense I had. And then only 2.1% on theatre. I probably went to see one show, I imagine. And then nothing for work and nothing for travel out of London. Now we're going to get into September, which was the start of things getting a little bit complicated. First of all, I did travel outside of London. I went to Holland, but the actual tickets I think they were paid by my parents. So I didn't pay for the flight. And then also while I was there, my father was there, so there weren't a lot of expenses. And I don't know exactly how I calculated it. I think probably what I did was, I know I transferred some money from my British bank account into a travel bank account. And I probably just included that amount, whatever I transferred. But A, that doesn't mean I spent it all. And B, and this is where it gets complicated, my flight home was cancelled. And then I had an unexpected audition to do in Belgium. So I had to buy a lot of things for that audition, which I've put in. Some of it has gone in the travel outside of London category and some of it has gone in the work category because I couldn't work it out exactly. I mean, I probably could have, but I didn't. But then, way after the fact, I think in November or maybe even later, I did get reimbursed basically everything that I spent from EasyJet. Not quite everything, but most of it. And again, there we had some that were in between travel out of London and work. Because, for example, I had to buy a flight out of Belgium. And I don't know if that was reimbursed. I can't remember. But I also can't remember if I put that as travel out of London or work. Because the only reason I had to buy the flight was because of work. So let's see, but just take it all with a grain of salt. Okay, 64% rent, fine. Yeah, then there's a massive category there for work, which is 17%. And as I say, almost all of that was reimbursed. And to be fair, I was hoping at the time that it would be reimbursed, but I didn't know. Because EasyJet didn't think it fell under the EC261 or whatever it's called. The rights that you have as a passenger that entitles you to £200 if you can't get on your flight. And I was very much relying on that. I think I spent in total, call it 80 to 100 euros. So I was hoping that I would get the £200, it would cover everything, and then I could give the rest, either keep it or give it to my parents. Because again, they were the ones who booked the flight. But as I say, that didn't happen. And then I didn't know which of the things I'd bought EasyJet would cover, because technically the fact that I had an audition wasn't their fault. But the fact I had to buy things was. That was my logic, because if I'd been able to go home, then I would have just brought my own stuff. But because I wasn't home, I had to buy things. Anyway, all that to say, I spent the 17%, and then at some point I got most of it back. Then it's only about 5% for travel in London, but in the end, I think I ended up spending 2.5 weeks in Holland. Maybe a bit less. But as a result, I spent less time travelling in London. Then 4.1% on groceries, but again, I had to do slightly less shopping because I was in Holland for most of it, and when I was in Holland, I wasn't paying for the groceries. Travel out of London, again, that 4%, I don't know what of it was and wasn't reimbursed. I think some of it was. I can't even think exactly, obviously this might be coaches and stuff that I took. Maybe the flight, but again, I don't know. Anyway, other is 3.3 and going out is 1.7, and I have no idea what going out could have been. Because the only day that I could have gone out, I think, would have been after the half marathon, but I got treated after the half marathon, so I didn't pay. So I don't know. And then there is a very meagre slice of pie at 0.6% for theatre. And again, I can't think what that would be. I know I went to the theatre, I went to The Importance of Being Earnest, but I went to that for free. But did I maybe also see something else that month? I mean, I must have, but I can't remember. On to October. Now again, it's a little bit messy here because I went to Holland again. I don't think there were any changes that time, but I did go to the Gatsby concert. So I first went to Belgium and then I went to Holland. So again, there might have been a bit more travel involved there. Although for this trip, my grandparents paid for the ticket because it was a birthday present. And I didn't go to any theatre that month. So there'll be 0% on that. But let's have a look. Okay, biggest portion of the pie is 75% rent. But again, that just means I spent less that month. And again, that's probably because I spent about a week in Holland. Although that still doesn't really add up to me. Only 1 week of the month. It shouldn't make such a big difference. But it did. Anyway, then travel in London again is the next biggest, which is 7.3%. Then groceries, 5.9%. Other, 5.4%. That's a bit bigger, actually, that month. Which is weird, because that's the month it was my birthday, not someone else's. I don't know. Then travel out of London, we've got 3.2%, so I probably did spend some money when I was in Holland. Theatre is 2.4%, going out 1.6%, and then nothing on work. I also don't know what the going out could have... Oh, maybe my birthday, to be fair. We went bowling and did some other fun stuff for my birthday, so that's probably the 1.6% there. November, I think, was a fairly even month. In terms of, I don't think anything wild happened. I didn't travel outside. The only thing I'm wondering is maybe there was 1 month where I did a really big donation. Basically, I want to be donating monthly, but what happened is I've been saying that for years and I never have. And then when I was at the London Winter Run in February, they wanted us to sign on to a monthly donation, which I was happy enough to do, but I didn't feel comfortable doing it in public. So Wayne gave his details instead. And so he's been paying monthly instead of me. And so I did one big transfer to him for all the money of the charity, for the charity. So I think that might have been in November, which would make the other slice quite big. But let's have a look. Yeah, there we go. So 65% was rent, then 15% other, and most of that 100% is the monthly donations. So really that 15% should actually be split across all of them, but whatever. Then travel in London's quite big in November. I don't know why it was so much bigger, but I suppose it was quite small in October, so probably that's why. Groceries, 6.2%, going out only 1.1%, theatre 0.9%, and then again, nothing on work and nothing on travel outside of London. And then finally, December, I think I had a couple of extra costs here because of gifts and whatnot. And that's also, I think, the month that I bought the big box of cards, which I do intend to use throughout the year. So it was like one big purchase, but it's gonna give me a lot. And again, I don't think I went to any theatre in December. So let's have a look. Yeah, so about 70% on rent. And again, that just implies that I spent less on everything else. Next biggest, again, is travel in London. That's happened a couple of times now. I spend so much money. Doing this showed me just how much I spend on my commute. And I've got a fairly easy and direct commute. So first of all, it's worrying to me, because I think every April they bump the prices. So I'm very nervous about that. But also just, I feel very sorry for anyone who doesn't have a fairly straightforward commute. And this is with me often choosing to take a bus instead of the tube because it's cheaper. Just crazy. Anyway, then we've got groceries at 8.4%, which is slightly bigger than a lot of the other months. And I think the reason for that, to be honest, is because we had more finger food, we had more party food, and that is more expensive than just pasta and rice and whatever, soup. Then other is the next biggest, so again, bills, but also I think some gifts probably. Then going out, I did go out a bit more in December. I kind of wanted to catch up with a bunch of people before everyone left for Christmas. And it turns out my friends all basically, most of them only left for I don't know, a week at most. But there was just that pressure of I want to see everyone. So I did go out a bit more, but it's still only 2%. Let's not go crazy here. But it was lovely. Then I've got work at 1.5%, and I can't think what that would be. I didn't go to any auditions in December. I don't know. And then finally theatre at 1.2%. Oh, because I booked something for January. So that would be why. And then no travel outside of London. So that's the breakdown of every month. Now let's quickly have a look at the whole year, or the whole 6 months, which months I spent more money in. Obviously July is going to be, I think, the biggest one because of the trip with the Dear Hopefuls. And then I think probably September and October are both going to be less because I was in Holland for some of it for both of those. And I spent less when I was in Holland. And then I think December will probably be the second biggest. But let's see. Oh, actually, okay, I lied. We'll come back to what I just said. This is a pie chart for in the year in total, in the 6 months in total, how much did I spend? So this is the averages. So on average in those 6 months, I spent almost 65% on rent, followed by 8.5% on travel in London, followed by my groceries, which is 6.6, which I do think those three make sense to be the three biggest: rent, travel in London, and groceries. I do feel logically to me, groceries should be more expensive than your commute. Well, I say that, but not more expensive. Sorry, I take that back. I think one should be spending more money on their food than on their travel in local travel. But equally, I don't think groceries should be more expensive. I think they should be cheap. Anyway, then I'm gonna say other. Other is so many things, but that is at 6.4%. Then we've got travel outside of London at 5%. And even though we did have what one might call exceptions in this 6 month period, because I went to meet the Dear Hopefuls and then I went to Holland twice, I do think this is fairly accurate because I do travel a lot. And some of the time that travel is covered by other people in my family or whatever, and some of the time I do spend it myself. So I actually think this is probably an accurate reflection of my life. But that's not to say that I spend 5% every month of my expenses on travel. Next, we've got theatre at 3.4%, which actually feels really small. Compared to how much theatre I see, that feels very small. But that's good, because I see a lot of theatre for not a lot of money. Then work is 3.1%, but again, that's really variable. And that's definitely so much bigger because of what happened in Holland with my audition. I think realistically, the average spend on work is probably under 2%. Oh, I skipped one. Oh, no, I didn't. and then going out is about 2%. And I think that probably is fairly accurate, especially as I'm trying to be more social and do more things, which unfortunately does involve spending money. So there you go. This is like the main graph of the 6 months. This is probably like the main one you would want to see. Now, let's quickly have a look at the breakdown of each month. I like this color scheme. I did pick it myself. So as I expected, July is the biggest. Surprisingly, September comes next. I'm quite surprised by that, actually. I don't know. Oh, I do know how that happened. That's because of all the things I bought for the audition and missing my flight, etc. But a lot of that was reimbursed. Then November, which is also really weird to me. I really thought December would be bigger, but it is the next biggest. It's the third biggest of this 6 months. Then August. I think August is probably like the most normal month. And then October, which I did expect to be the smallest, although it's not like a huge difference. But there you go. That's everything. That's all the pie charts I have. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was insightful. I'm curious if you happen to know, or if you also keep track of your finances, what your top categories are of the year, or just in general, monthly, whatever. Do you track your finances? That's also something I'm very curious about. I do really recommend it. I think it's very important. And as I've already said, like, I'm quite lucky in that I don't spend very much. I don't have a lot of things that I care deeply about in terms of like needing to spend money on. I know for a lot of people, they want the latest fashion, or they just want new clothes, or they want new makeup, or they want new shoes, or whatever. And I just do not care about any of that. Or video games, or I don't know, like anything. Or even just a meal, like going out to a restaurant or ordering takeaway. I don't do any of that, or at least very, very rarely. But I do think for someone who might be that way inclined to spend a lot of money on one or two things, passions, I do think it's probably worth doing this and just like paying attention to where the money goes. Like the fact that theatre was only 3.5% for me on average is quite a good insight because I thought it probably would be quite a bit more. And so to me, that tells me it's okay, you're not going overboard with it. Whereas if that was like 15% of the pie, I would maybe be questioning that a little bit and, you know, saying to myself like, maybe we should cut back on that. And I'm not saying like get rid of things that make you happy, absolutely not, because, you know, we need to have pleasures in life. And I've really been trying in the last like year or so and going into this year, really trying to allow myself to every so often treat myself a little bit more, whether that literally just means taking the tube instead of the bus, or whether it means ordering a takeaway, or whether it means, I don't know, like buying snacks when I go to the cinema or the theatre or whatever, or getting a coffee. Like these things, I really struggle with spending money. And so I'm really trying, like I've now got a consistent income and a consistent like spending. And I know how much I save, and I know that I am able to afford to spend an extra £5 to £10 a month on treats, essentially. So I'm working very hard to rewire my brain on that. But, you know, this goes both ways. Treat yourself, but also don't go overboard with it. And I think that's another reason why it's really good to be tracking money in this way, because then if I'm suddenly allowing myself too many liberties, I suppose we shall call it, then I know to maybe dial that back a bit because it's getting too much. I don't know. I'm quite passionate about having money and I'm not very passionate about spending money. But yeah, let me know all your thoughts. There's obviously a lot of conversations to be had around money, and I know that it's a sensitive topic for some people. I probably should have prefaced this video with that, and I will put in a disclaimer at the start. And obviously you don't have to share anything you don't want to, but if you do want to have a bit of a conversation about it, even though I don't like talking about money, I do find it interesting to have these conversations and just like be aware of it. Now my tea's got quite cold, but I do still have a little bit left, so I'm going to finish that. And then I'm just going to have a very chill, cozy, warm evening. I'll see you all in another video very soon. Bye!